In this week's Bizline, special working group set up to speed up public disbursement. And in our crosstalk, developing safe, transparent capital market. Hello there, you're tuning into Bizline, our weekly economic journal on VTV International. I'm Hoàng Hằng, and as usual, we now take a look at news making headlines in Vietnam's economic scene this week.
Prime Minister Phạm Minh Chính has decided to establish 6 working groups to accelerate the disbursement of public investment in 2022 at ministries, agencies and localities. The working groups are responsible for handling obstacles related to the disbursement of public investment in 2022 in provinces and cities, ministries and agencies that have recorded disbursement rates below 60% by the 30th of April. They are also tasked with identifying the causes of problems in the implementation of public investment projects, especially those using ODA capital and concessional loans from foreign investors, as well as proposing solutions for speeding up disbursement and improving the efficiency of capital.
Vietnam's export turnover of goods in the first 4 months of this year was estimated at more than $122 billion, up 16.4% over the same period last year. 22 types of goods achieved an export turnover of over $1 billion, 6 of which recorded over $5 billion in export turnover. Notably, Vietnam is estimated to have exported over $1 billion worth of seafood products in April, bringing turnover during the first 4 months of 2022 to nearly $3.6 billion, a 44% increase year-on-year, in which trifish exports achieved the most impressive growth of 89% during the 4-month period, with $894 million worth of products sold. Currently, Vietnamese trifish exports to the U.S. are priced at $4.5 per kilogram, the highest level in the past 3 years.
In April, a number of banks increased their savings interest rates, especially small and medium-sized banks. Overall, in the past 3 months, the deposit interest rates of many banks increased by 0.3 to 0.7%. Specifically, the savings interest rate ranges from 5.5% to 7.6% per year, depending on the bank. The online deposit interest rate at several banks is currently 0.1 to 0.3% higher than the over-the-counter deposit rate. Data from the State Bank of Vietnam in February showed that residential deposits continued to maintain an upward trend. Deposit interest rates will also increase this year as capital demand and inflationary pressure are also increasing.
Vietnam has become one of the top 50 countries in the world with the fastest growth rates in renewable power sources, with over 10% of electricity coming from wind and solar power in 2021. This is according to a recent report titled Global Electricity Review 2022 by independent think tank Amber. Vietnam is among 7 countries that hit the landmark for the first time. In 2021, Vietnam saw astonishing growth in solar as it increased its generation by 337%, equivalent to 17 terawatt-hours in a single year, to become the world's 10th largest solar generator. This solar growth meant that Vietnam was the only country in Asia to meet and exceed its entire rise in demand with new wind and solar. The country's combined wind and solar capacity has increased by 4 times since 2019.
During the recent 4-day national holiday at the end of April and the beginning of May, Vietnam's tourism sector served 5 million domestic tourists, according to data from the Vietnam National Administration of Tourism. Total revenue from tourism activities in this period was around $958 million. Localities have boosted cooperation and developed new tourism products, as well as hosted festivals to attract tourists. This has helped the sector prepare for peak tourism season, which is expected to start in September.
Those are some highlights in Vietnam's economic scene. Up next in our crosstalk, we will look into Vietnam's effort to develop a safe and transparent capital market in the coming time. Stay tuned. Vietnam's capital market has recorded fast growth in recent years, expanding by 28.5% annually on average during 2016 to 2021 period. However, the rapid growth of the stock and bond market has also posed latent risks, such as market manipulation, bond mobilization for wrong purposes, and legal infringements. The government and related ministries and agencies have taken drastic measures and tightened management to handle such cases and to ensure a transparent and healthy capital market. So how have bonds and securities become an effective channel to mobilize capital for businesses? Which measures has the government implemented to ensure the stability of the capital market? We'll find out more in this week's episode of Bizline. But first, let's have an overview of the development of Vietnam's capital market in the following clip.
The Vietnamese capital market includes securities and bond markets. Securities and bonds are two of the three key channels that attract capital for enterprises. According to a report at a recent conference chaired by Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh, the size of Vietnam's capital market has increased 3.5-fold. It increased from an equivalent of 40% of the country's GDP in 2015 to 134% of its GDP in 2021. The Vietnam Business Forum's Capital Markets Working Group stated that Vietnam's capital markets offer tremendous opportunities. This is illustrated by the total capitalization of the country's equity markets of approximately $340 billion, or 95.6% of its GDP, ahead of the vision set for Vietnam in 2025. Moreover, capital generated in the form of stock and debt totaled an expected $29.1 billion, or 45% of overall credit, in 2021. The Vietnamese stock market has become one among the most liquid markets in Southeast Asia, according to the State Securities Commission, while the corporate bond market has also been an effective channel for attracting capital over recent years.
In order to learn more about the topic, we connect now to Dr. Lê Duy Bình, Director of Economica Vietnam, to discuss this matter further. Thank you so much for joining our Bizline program. How do you assess the development of Vietnam's capital market, especially as the market size has increased significantly by 3.5 times over the last 6 years?
This growth rate is incredible to some observers. And it is one of the highest rates in ASEAN country. And the total market capitalization of the stock market in Vietnam is about 7.7 trillion Vietnamese đồng. And with 96% of GDP, and this ratio have exceeded the target set by the government for 2025. So this is quite impressive in terms of growth of the stock market. And when we look at the second component of the capital market, which is the corporate bond market, the growth rate in the last 6 years has been at about 40 to 45% per year per annum. That is quite incredible in terms of creating a new market for medium and long-term sources of funds for the enterprise in Vietnam. In 2021, 658,000 billion Vietnamese đồng was mobilized in the form of medium and long-term capitals in the form of corporate bond. And that has contributed to the growth of the financial market and the capital market in Vietnam. It has contributed to the growth of the Vietnamese enterprise in the last 6 years. And the corporate bond market now has already in par with the government bond market. And that is quite good for the development of Vietnam in the last few years. Vietnamese enterprise have succeeded in mobilizing funds on the international market.
The size of Vietnam's capital market is said to have outgrown its frontier status. What is your thought on this?
The market in Vietnam is qualified to be an emerging market one in terms of the market size, but there are some other issues that need to be addressed. That, for example, like some need to be addressed by laws, by regulation changes. For example, like the regulation changes in terms of the room on foreign ownership, for example. But some can be addressed technically. For example, like the performance or the functioning the operation of the Ho Chi Minh City Stock Exchange, for example. That is one of the problems. Some technical issues that is remaining. The accessibility of information that is available in English for foreign investors by listed companies.
This company issued its first convertible bonds to attract foreign capital 26 years ago. It received approval by the Ministry of Finance as a pilot project. As such, the company successfully raised $5 million with an annual interest rate of 4%. From this initial issuance, the corporate bond market has experienced strong development. According to the Ministry of Finance, as of the first quarter of 2022, the corporate bond market had a size equivalent to 14.2% of GDP, a threefold increase compared to the 4.93% of GDP in 2017. This has helped enterprises diversify their channels of capital mobilization for operations.
Tín dụng cho nền kinh tế ở phía ngân hàng đấy là 100, thì cái phần huy động vốn qua trái phiếu doanh nghiệp là 50 bằng một nửa. Cái sự phát triển đấy nó thể hiện một cái là nền kinh tế cần thị trường trái phiếu doanh nghiệp. Kinh tế Việt Nam muốn phát triển cần có doanh nghiệp muốn phát triển cần có một cái kênh huy động vốn qua trái phiếu doanh nghiệp. Chúng ta không thể ngưng sự phát triển của thị trường trái phiếu.
Meanwhile, the stock market has recorded tremendous achievements with outstanding growth. It has contributed a significant proportion to the country's total capital for development.
Thanh khoản trên thị trường cổ phiếu năm 2021 đạt 258% so với bình quân của năm 2020 và tiếp tục tăng trong những tháng đầu năm của năm 2022. Trong 5 tuần gần đây, nhà đầu tư nước ngoài mua ròng cổ phiếu và chứng chỉ quỹ 3.589 tỷ đồng, khoảng 155 triệu đô la Mỹ.
In recent years, Vietnam's capital market has developed strongly in both size, types of products and liquidity, making crucial contributions to the economy.
In your opinion, what kind of risks Vietnam may face as the market is growing fast? How has this made it crucial to improve the market's transparency and efficiency to ensure healthy development?
Information transparency, internet trading, these are some of the issues that has been addressed. That is the risk that we can see both in the stock market or the corporate bond market. And in terms of the corporate market development, and some of the figures show that about 38% of the corporate bonds are related to property or issues by property-related companies. In other words, 38% or 40% of the corporate bond market goes to the property market. So the over-reliance on one of these very volatile sector that can also be very make the market, the corporate bond market is very vulnerable to the risks that can take place in the property market. 70% of the bond market is either issues or held by banks or by credit institutions, related institutions. So banks and credit institutions play a very important role, a major role in the corporate bond market. It is not bad, but it's not good either, because we still rely a lot on banks-related institutions in terms of issuing the bond market and also in terms of holding the bond market. We need to diversify more players on the market. About 80% of the issuing companies are unlisted companies. An unlisted company, it does not mean that they are not performing badly or they are not good. But the problem with many of the unlisted companies is that the information transparency of unlisted companies is often less than companies that is listed. So for many listed companies, we don't know what they do with the funds that they mobilize after the fund that is mobilized through the corporate bond issuance. The oversight of the corporate bond market by the regulators, by the government agencies or some of the ministries cannot catch up with the development of the market. With that fast growth rate of 40% per annum of the corporate bond market in the last 6 years, and the value of the corporate bonds have grown exponentially, and with the number of companies that have have gone up very fast in the last 6 years, but the information system of the regulators, of the government agency that is assigned to oversee the market, or of other players in the market cannot catch up with this growth, and they often do not have enough information, oversight information on the company that issues the bond, or the companies that support the bond market to grow, for example.
According to experts, the financial market has been exposed to risks of instabilities as the real estate and stock markets are growing too fast. This has led to potential risks and violations related to market manipulation, bond mobilization for wrong purposes, and law infringement. In order to foster safe and healthy development of the capital market, the government recently held a conference chaired by Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh to gather opinions from experts and to come up with efficient solutions.
Chính phủ thể hiện rất rõ quan điểm xử lý nghiêm và quyết liệt những hành vi sai trái để minh bạch hóa thị trường và bảo vệ nhà đầu tư, doanh nghiệp, người dân. Nếu chúng ta không làm quyết liệt, một con sâu làm rầu nồi canh như các cụ đã nói, sẽ ảnh hưởng đến việc huy động vốn trung và dài hạn, đến thị trường trái phiếu, cổ phiếu, chủ trương phát triển thị trường vốn, đến niềm tin của nhà đầu tư trong và ngoài nước và ảnh hưởng đến nền kinh tế của chúng ta nói chung.
The government has directed the Ministry of Finance and other relevant ministries and agencies to complete the legal framework, as well as issue proper and efficient policies and mechanisms to protect investors' rights. They must ensure the transparency of securities companies. The Prime Minister assigned the Ministry of Finance to lead other agencies in reviewing, researching and proposing authorized units to amend current regulations, the law on securities, and the law on enterprises, as well as to enhance the inspection and monitoring of corporate bond issuance and trading. The Ministry of Finance is working hard to submit the revised draft of Decree 153 on private placement and trading of corporate bonds to the government.
Chúng tôi sẽ là giám sát cái vấn đề mục đích phát hành, phạm vi phát hành, cũng như coi các cái điều kiện về phát hành, chẳng hạn như thua lỗ hay là nợ xấu hay là không đảm bảo về an toàn tài chính thì gọi cậu là không được phát hành. Khi phát hành phải đăng ký với cơ quan nhà nước, khi sử dụng vốn và hoàn tất cái việc sử dụng vốn phải đăng ký để đảm bảo cho cái vấn đề huy động vốn này ấy, là phải tập trung vào trong cái vấn đề phát triển dự án, trong cái vấn đề mở rộng sản xuất kinh doanh.
Besides, the Prime Minister has requested stronger measures to handle violations on both the bond and securities markets to ensure safe, transparent and sustainable development of the capital market.
The government has taken a number of drastic actions to clean up the financial market. Most recently, the Prime Minister chaired a conference discussing the development of the capital market with an aim to protect lawful rights of compliant investors and businesses. How do you assess such efforts of the government?
Sometimes the market does not perform well and it affects the third parties' interests, especially like the investors, for example, or it affects the sound and safe development of the whole financial market in general and of the capital market in particular. And then the government needs to intervene. And we see that these middle peer will have to address the issue, the sickness of the market that we are facing now. And for us, we see that that is a very timely and correct measures that we need to take. That's very harsh, very difficult actions, difficult measures, but they are necessary to ensure that the market will develop in a sound, in a sustainable manner in the future. And that would restore and it would build up the confidence of the investors, domestic or foreign alike.
We really welcome the government's efforts to improve disclosure and transparency of issuances in the corporate bond market, to strengthen the regulation. It will foster greater investor protection, both for individual investors as well as for other retail investors.
Well, I think Vietnam government is doing the right thing. This is a very, very serious crime. This could jeopardize the entire stock market if this is not treated seriously, and this problem is not not controlled properly.
So if market became more, clear, I think even the MSCI will consider to revise up the index from frontier to emerging again. I think for the longer term, it's very positive. So as you know, the foreign institutions, they don't buy the equities for such a short term. Always long term, especially like a Vietnam equities market, because they are investing in the growth of this country.
What are your suggestions for Vietnam to further improve its capital markets quality and transparency in the coming time?
And for the regulators, I think that the information systems of the regulators, like the State Securities Commission and the different other players in the market, like the company who assists the functioning of the markets, that need to be improved. So only with the better information can regulators can give the right decisions in terms of making that the market is well monitored. So whenever there is a weakness or there is constraint that pop up, and it can appropriate measures can be taken right away. So it is very important that the regulator making sure that all the companies who issue the bond, who are listed on the stock market, have to adhere to comply with information disclosure requirement strictly. And they need to know, for them, like when they, after a bond issuance, they need to send report on a regular basis on if the money is well spent, is well dispersed on the right purpose. And these are the information that is relevant for the regulators and also for the investors.
Along with regulatory efforts, what is the role of market players such as credit institutions, businesses and investors in this regard?
Are the market players like issuing bodies, the issuing companies, or the advising company, consulting companies, or for example, like some stock the securities company who advise companies who issues in the issuing of the bond, for example, also have some obligation in terms of information disclosures because they're advising, so they need also to disclose information on the company who issued the bond in which they advise. For example, these are the requirements need to be reflected in the law, in the regulations, and we need to follow it strictly. So instead of fake news, we need to have the mainstream information to be well functioning. And also we need to have the rating companies, corporate bond rating or business rating companies to be more of them in the market in the coming years. They also contribute to the developments of the market as well. And also on the investor side, they also need to prepare themselves. They need to become more professional. They need to be more knowledgeable in terms of financial investment, for example. They need to know where to put the money. They have some basic analytical skill. And if they cannot invest themselves, they have to rely on the professional investors, investment fund, for example.
Well, thank you so much for joining our Bizline program.
You are welcome.
Vietnam aims to develop the stock market to a size of 120% of its GDP and the bond market to be equivalent to 55% of its GDP by 2025. In order to achieve those goals, the National Financial Supervisory Commission said that Vietnam will build a strong capital market with a balanced structure of securities, corporate bonds and government bonds. They will foster state-owned enterprises' restructuring processes. This is expected to facilitate a safe, efficient, healthy and sustainable capital market for Vietnam's socio-economic development in the long run. And that brings us to the end of our Bizline program. You can always visit our YouTube channel at VTV4 Go or download our app VTV Go from App Store and Google Play for a lot more. Thank you for tuning in and see you next time.